Hello. Hello. How are you, my friend?
Oh, my brother, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I had a great time in LA. I was out in LA this past few days. I went on Wednesday for a cybersecurity conference.
Oh my
And
God,
so,
that is good stuff.
perfect.
Did you
Years
say
ago,
security conference?
cybersecurity. And so it's called AppSec, so application security.
Okay.
And so, and yeah, so some cloud organizations, security innovations. GitHub was there. A number of organizations talking about application security, talking about AI. So it was great. It was great.
Oh my goodness.
Hey,
Maybe
can you hear me? Hey,
yeah, I can hear you. I like your background. That is really nice. Yeah, you're going in
I'm
and
in the
out.
backyard.
Oh yeah, you're in the backyard. That's
Uh,
really nice. I like the backyard. It looks really nice.
I live outside.
Oh my, you are an environmental kind of guy, right?
Yeah, yeah. I know. And I'll add a little bit about that because it's really about being outside and looking up in the stars. That's how it all began. Is you think Galileo and Da Vinci and all these other ones, they looked up at the stars. And so they were outside. And that
Excellent.
is different. But yeah, Trail Inc., because
Okay.
would normally think the Rose of Education organization as
Okay.
nonprofit.
Okay.
We're not a nonprofit. We're in
And aiming to amplify STEM initiatives like yours. Are you more into space industries and cybersecurity? I can assure you, not many students actually know much about space industry. But NASA, I know, is ramping up, but they need to know, right?
Yeah, exactly. Elon Musk, Sir Richard Branson, Virgin Galactic.
Welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Olufade, the host of STEAMSparks Think STEAM Careers podcast. Today, we are fortunate. Uh, I'm going to introduce you to a great guy. He is known as Grandpa. I think that's his brand name. I'll let him introduce himself. He's doing something phenomenal. He's in space industry. He's in cybersecurity. And as we all know, NASA is really ramping up to go put boots on Mars. And Elon Musk, Virgin Galactica, we know they are doing. Bezos is also in the game. I think it's great to have a guest such as Anthony, Grandpa, we call him Grandpa, to talk to us about what he's doing and his vision for his company and how we can amplify, or we as a BIPOC community can really be part of this space as part of this innovation. Anthony, Grandpa, welcome to STEAM Spark Think STEAM Career Podcast. How have you been, sir?
Dr. Olufade, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and your listeners. So, yeah, Grandpa, I'm a grandpa, and give you a little bit of background about my being a grandpa. I am a grandfather. 19 years ago, I witnessed the birth of my grandson, and and I'm holding him in my arms, and it really transported me through time and to think about what his life would be when he's holding his first grandchild. And that really sparked my thought about what could I do as a grandpa who's worked in the IT field, in the STEM and STEAM industries, unbeknownst, accidentally, but how could I help my grandchild or my grandchildren to discover their gifts and talents and their abilities that would align with what the industries need today. They need creative thinking. They need a different perspectives and thought, and how do we help these young people tap into their curiosity so that could lead them to careers to be innovators and not just consumers. And I'm holding my son and grandson in my arms, and I'm thinking 50 years in the future. This was in 2004 when Nate was born. And so I'm thinking, so yeah, 2020, late 2050s, 2060s, what will the world be like? What will education be like? What will the world be celebrating? And I thought about in sales and business development, my job, IT field, was projection and determining what would be the latest trends and what would be the best places to steer our application development toward that would meet the customer's needs, and also thinking about the future. So thinking about the future of U.S. and the U.S. are celebrating the centennial of their space program. No longer the USR, but still, those pioneers began almost coming up to 100 years. Up to 100 years, that centennial will be happening, and those celebrations that will be in the news. But what will be the opportunities for my grandchildren or even the children of Africa and of India and other countries? Will they be a captive audience, or will they aspire to become captains of industry or enterprise as humanity takes its next grand voyage among the stars? And so my thought then became, how can Grandpa help? How can I use what I've learned since 1992, working in Silicon Valley, watching how imaginations were turned into application and dreams were becoming reality and products, and that it was somewhat of a thinking about that and thinking about how can we use that, combine my love of education, of games, of innovation, and just and creativity, how to put that into create a platform that can help to inspire my grandchildren and create a bridge of learning through play, through games, which is how we learn.
Yes.
And so that became the beginning of the journey.
Thank you so much, Grandpa. Do you mind if I continue calling you Grandpa, because that name now is going to speak?
I love and listen, and so I write the story for my grandkids. And so I kind of say that. And so I started the story with, a part of it is with Grandpa Geek went down in the creek to build a flying machine for my grandkids with bricks, sticks, and coconuts. For 3 years, he wasn't seen.
Wow.
He came back up as Grandpa Stork, and on a dragon, he was flying. And in the immortal words of Pelosi said, get busy living or get busy dying. And so that's my little philosophy. And I don't know if you've seen the movie, a great Western with Clint Eastwood called The Outlaw Josie Wales.
Yes.
And so in that movie is a famous saying called get busy living or get busy dying. And for me, that was my thought. So I thought about what I had done or had done to give back as an African American in the IT field. I enjoyed the success. And even though I didn't go to university or college.
Can you elaborate, expand on that, please?
Yeah, yeah. And so what was really interesting in working especially in the Silicon Valley area and most of the companies saw a way to solve a problem. What I learned in Silicon Valley, watching these entrepreneurs turn their imaginations into applications, and that really centered around conversations that we had in these development and programming teams. And so a bunch of guys and women sitting around a whiteboard talking about where do we go next as far as development of our software application. So what I learned from that is that it was a diverse team, a diverse thought, that you can take an idea and with a lot of different input, turn it into something that's inclusive, but also that can be used widely and has value and benefit. And so when I thought about developing educational games, applications for my grandchildren to help create a bridge of learning to the STEM and STEAM fields to help them find their gifts and talents, the idea was that, okay, if I'm going to do this type of development, who do I want to be a part of that? Whose input do I want? And I want people who have this, like, who is it for? And the idea of taking a technological concept for, say, in one case, an acronymic large language model, an acronymic programming language, taking that idea and concept, boiling it down to its simplest form. Like in this case, taking the letters of your name, turning it into an acronym, and begin to define and describe who you are, define your story using just the letters of your name, and start thinking about what words that begin with the letters of my name begin to describe who I feel I am, who I was.
Can you please tell us a little bit about your journey into STEM field?
Oh, I've always been involved in the STEM field. My early jobs were in the construction trades. So it's a lot of measuring. So building houses, building decks, fences, landscaping. And so there was a lot of technology involved. But we didn't think about it that way. Building a 200-foot fence and calculating the measurements and understanding how much per square foot the materials would cost and how much the labor would cost them. I think about all that work I was doing. I didn't think about myself as working in the STEM field, but I was applying that in the trade that I was working in. And the thought of engineering, designing a home, or engineering the framework for a deck, or in a slab for a house. All those things were part of my early beginnings in my work career. Even though that I really didn't enjoy science and math in school, the way it was taught, I would prefer to be outside. And so back in 1992, I was sent on a temporary work assignment to answer the phones for a laptop computer company. So a receptionist. I went to answer the phones, to direct calls to the sales department, to the technical support department, so forth and so on. And what was interesting was that because I'm naturally curious, I would go back and I would chat with the sales team. I would talk with the engineering team, and I'd watch what they were doing and designing and building a laptop. And what dawned on me was that this is not much different from when we're building a house. Designing a house, putting where the plumbing and electrical work and all these central heating and all these things. For me, the light bulb went off, and I was able to make that connection, and it no longer was a mystery. And it was like, oh, I understand. Now I get it. Okay. All right. And so by the end of that week of answering the phones, I was no longer forwarding the calls to the sales department, to the technical support department, or many calls to the tech department, because I knew the answer, because I had recited it so many times, but then also gained an understanding of what was going on. I could begin to answer a lot of these questions myself, so saving the sales and tech department some time. So after a week of answering the phones, the company decided to say, we got to hire this kid. And they hired me in the sales department. That was in February of 1992. And I haven't looked back. Silicon Valley had been my playground and my university. I was being paid to learn my trade and to understand the language. And I didn't get certified in any particular discipline, but was able to I was in the sales and business development department. And so that just entailed communicating, telling stories, and just aligning what we were doing, and having a belief and understanding of what I was selling, or what the company was doing, and what the overall vision was, that it all aligned with what I believed as well. And so, yeah, I've had such great experiences being able to learn in an environment that catered to, it didn't squash my creativity or curiosity. And it was somewhat of a game to me. I looked at it that way, and it was fun. And
I also wanted to ask you, I'm glad that you mentioned that a lot of your experience you learned from work, starting pretty young and early. I will say, did you say landscaping or carpentry?
yeah, the construction trade.
In
So
construction trade. Yeah.
building houses, building decks, building fences,
Wow.
planting trees, digging ditches, all those things.
Right now, for example, I teach in technical school. Probably some of our students will never go to college. I see that you're working in the STEAM field. Do you really have to go to college to work in the STEM field and earn good money?
No,
Yeah. Yeah. You
you
don't have you
no.
don't
And because, when you think about the STEM and STEAM field, that part of it is arts design, engineering, conceptualization, all these disciplines, they're just not in one bucket. And there's a spectrum in all of those. And so when you think about what in industries like gaming or in sports, all of those have there are technically there's STEM and STEAM aspects of those. And but even in the industry like cybersecurity, not all jobs are technical. Being able to problem solve, being able to analyze, being able to harmonize frameworks, and being able to just bring your own experiences to the discussion about how we can defend against incoming threats or what to look for.
Yeah.
And so it's really about it's a lot of the soft skills, and it's about communication. There's the technical skills you can learn, and you don't need to go to college to learn. And so what are the things, and even though I didn't go to college or university, I did I just studied for and get my cybersecurity certification.
Yeah.
And so that was like going back to school. But being an entrepreneur is also, being on an entrepreneurial journey, that is an education in itself. That's an MBA in having to, navigate all the things you need to do to build a successful company, not even build a successful company, just to create a 3 to 5 year business plan and to create a pro forma that can pass an accountant's underwriting. Doing that for me was what was my MBA, being able to go through that process, but being able to do that in a way that, not everybody learns the same way. And so they're like myself, who are kinesthetic learners. I learn through my body and being able to understand the concept of physics, of inertia and gravity and trajectory, and being able to see how I make those calculations innately. And I think one of the interesting prospects of using games to help create a bridge of learning, it can also help individuals identify their process of learning. For me, it was about identifying how I learned this concept and how it feels in my body and my movement. And it became an experimentation and a laboratory, and applying these concepts to understanding how we all operate. And games are part of that, and whether it be physical games or literacy games, if to help building our own creativity. So these all have application in these STEAM fields, because it's about the expression of any ideas or solutions we might see. And education is part of that, and understanding the language of how to express it in a manner that can be understood by a 6-year-old or my grandmother, but also has the meat that can satisfy any due diligence as well.
Excellent. I'm glad that you mentioned gaming. My conversation with you all of a sudden brought another thought, and the thought has to do with the virtual reality, using virtual reality as a form of learning, as a medium, as a tool of learning. Do you think there is a space for that in the education field? She did mention games as a way to engage. Many people are talking about virtual reality. I can imagine that virtual reality can be a constructive form of a game to try to engage engage the young people as a way of educating. Do you think there is a space for that in this field of education?
Absolutely. And in fact, Grandpa STORK is accounting on it. And we're building that as part of our platform, gaming and play-based learning. And so we think about the image of the stork delivering a baby. In this case, Grandpa STORK is delivering a dragon's egg. Egg is an acronym for exercises, games, and gear. It's really called the Dragon's Fire Flying Egg, part of the Dragon's Fire suite of live action, AR, VR, flying games. And so we're when you think about gaming and virtual reality, and really, if you just close your eyes, when we dream and we imagine, and we put ourselves in a virtual reality. When we suspend, when we're reading a book, when we're watching a movie, or we're engaged in activities that just take our full sensory attention. We transport ourselves into a different reality. And it's in those states what they call the flow states, the state that bring in that make it easier for learning. Learning becomes more accessible. And so what we're doing is been using games, the first iteration and the first part of the product development path of the games is a physical platform, non-technology, but the vision is of then a virtual reality flying platform you stand on and you use your body as a way to simulate what it'd be like to stand on the back of a dragon on Harry Potter's broom on the Silver Surfer surfboard, all that's in the air. And what does that mean? And what does it take? And can we use harness the kinetic energy of the human body to really in, reimagine and envision what and games to be like, not just sitting down, but something that is dynamic. But then what is the science, technology, engineering, art, and math of dragon flying? So the games then become a bridge. They become a conduit or a way to make more accessible to those ones who learn better, get better engaged in the STEM fields through this type of media. And so ultimately, the trail has been developing a really what kind of games I would have wanted when I was growing up. And looking out there and say, okay, what when I was looking for my grandkids as far as what kind of applications out there, I couldn't find anything that were really appealing, that really help to inspire the intellect, ignite the imagination, and inform the individuality of all students. Or for me, in that case, I didn't find anything engaging about what I was seeing. So we can do better. What does Grandpa learn? How do Grandpa is, might have something to say about that. And so that began then the quest for the dragon's egg to how do we hatch a new generation of fitter and smarter kids, ones that can, who are assured of their identity and have the confidence in who they are and how to express their unique talents into the world and have taken the responsibility to nurture these gifts and talents and superpowers with compassion, humility, and integrity to lead humanity into the future. And so that's really the vision trail is how do we help this new generation to take their place as leaders and innovators and not follow, and that they have a place in them, that they have a stake in the future.
Excellent. Excellent. In our previous conversation, you mentioned that you have traveled quite a lot. How have this experience shaped your perspective on STEM education and opportunities?
Okay, yeah. Okay. So I founded the Rose of Education organization in 2000, and so it was incorporated. And so for 3 years, I began just to learn. I'm not an educator by education or game developer, quote unquote, but those have been my passions and interests. And so I spent the first 3 years just learning. And so after I conceptualized it, and so after the first 3 years, okay, time to take these concepts on the road, and not just in my own backyard in California or in the US, but take it out into the wild. So let's say, and so the first country I landed in February of 2014 was Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And that was supposed to be a 2-week exploratory trip to test the concept. Dar es Salaam, Moshi, and Kilimanjaro. Test the concept for the language literacy game using acronyms, real names game. And that 2-week trip was so successful, I said, okay, maybe I'll extend it. So it turned out, and then I went to India next. I went to India for a month, and that went well. And then so Cambodia, Vietnam, Brazil, then back to Tanzania, then Kenya, then Malawi, then Germany. And so that 2-week trip turned into a 9-year odyssey, 9-year quest for the dragon. Still ongoing. I've been to 20 countries visited, lived in 8 countries. And this year I've been in 5. And so, but what I've seen especially because initially the travels were, okay, so how will these concepts work in, so like in the mountains of schools up in the mountain villages in Kilimanjaro, or in the slums of India, or in Cambodia and so forth. And without, they don't have iPads and everything else. And so the idea was to test these. And what I saw was it's challenging. Education system is challenging in countries that don't have the type of resources that Western countries have. And so in order to acquire training the teachers and educators, resources, especially in areas that are marginalized, that are marginalized even in third world developing countries. And so there's a big challenge, but so they have a lot of challenge being able to, how do you engage students that are naturally curious and have an aptitude for these skills, but they don't have teachers who can really, or parents who are really, can really help them in that sense. And so what I saw then was a large opportunity to come in and say, okay, here's a game that's meant to be an acronymic large language model, an AI, a programming language, but here it is. We're presented it on a chalkboard as a game. Take the name, and so we're starting to teach them the concept of coding and programming and critical thinking and problem solving and so forth through this game that really becomes part of the framework of how the application would work anyway. And, but so what it solved then is that it doesn't take much. It just takes a bit of imagination. And so we threw a lot of money, and even with training is important, the resources are important, but we can do a lot with our own native curiosity and imaginations. And for me, what is proven that just as a grandpa walking up and just saying, I have this game, and here's some coconuts, stand on these, and this is going to be a virtual reality game, and have them suspend disbelief and imagine them flying on the back of a dragon, or writing their name on a chalkboard, or imagine them programming an application with the letters of their name. That it doesn't take much to expose and then to create opportunities to start that process of questioning, and then bring in for those, because we're looking for, how do we cast a wider net, or a more finely tuned net, or how do we make sure those who might be slipping through the cracks, those ones who have just made it innate brilliance, make sure that they're identified, nurtured, and cultivated as well.
Here's my question to you is, you mentioned your product, the House of Flying Dragon. So how does it work? And then the other question that I have is, in all your travels, because all our jobs is to try to bring more awareness as to the importance of STEM and STEAM in our community. What do you think about the reception to a product like yours in the United States compared to other countries like in India or in Africa? Are students more receptive to engineering, to STEAM in other countries comparable to United States? And what possibly do you think is, and if they're not in the United States, where do you think the disconnect could be?
Okay, good question. And so Grandpa Stork's House of Flying Dragons is a play-based learning and innovation lab, innovation space. And so I call it a pop-up innovation lab, play-based learning space. And so what that is ultimately will be a platform for this kind of creativity and ideation and innovation. And so what has been envisioned is as a physical place where we can do all the experimentation, all the different games, and building the flying hoverboards and flying games and the game-based learning lab. But what I found then is that being able to come in so in Grandpa Stork's House of Flying Dragons, that is the lab or the space where the real names game, the Dragon's Egg, the Space Ark, the Eden 3 Mars colony, that's where all those parts of the roads of education, what we'll be delivering, are being. And so what I've been doing in my travels is I've gone to these different countries like India and Africa, and even in the US. And I bring in, so Grandpa Stork's pop-up play-based learning space, an innovation lab. So we come in, and whether it be schools or universities or drug abuse prevention organizations or organizations that help support families with autism and Down syndromes, or even at a leprosy colony. Um, I found that across the board, it's been universally accepted as far as as a concept for that I can come in, like I said, just without taking up any resources of a school. So say you have a chalkboard, we can use that. We have paper and pen, we can use those as far as playing some of these games, which, like with the real names game, or we can play outside. I have some coconuts or we have some tree branches that we can do all that with what surrounds us. And so I think it's been that approach and seeing how we can simplify education and like you said, the environment. Nature is our teacher. We think about the first dreamers and visionaries. Where were they at? They weren't inside buildings. They were outside under a tree or looking up into the stars and envisioning and dreaming, and then turning those dreams into something tangible or something that they could relate to others so that others could be inspired and perceive a discipline or course of branch of study or of interest. And I don't think that's changed. And that we have to celebrate those who would dream more, and especially those who daydream. And so the Rose of Education organization, right, vision has really been designed as a garden. So part of the Rose's story also begins once upon a time.
Yeah, if I may interject, I'm glad that you said into Trio Inc. I was going to ask you about the Rose of Education organization. If you could elaborate on the mission and the goal for the trio. I think you call yourself Trio Inc., which stands for the Rose of Education organization. Regarding the population of African Americans, is about 13%, if I'm not mistaken, and Hispanics about 15%. But there are representation, especially as African American, in the STEAM or STEM field is about 7%, depending on which article you look at. That number is really low. So because you have traveled vast and you have introduced your product to other countries, to other students in other countries and children in other countries, I'm curious, can we glimpse or gain some insight as to what we can do here in the United States to get our students more interested and build up our capacity here in the United States? But please continue first with the mission for Trio Inc., and then you can come back, please.
Okay, great. No, thank you for that. Okay, the story of the rose begins. Once upon a time, in a garden of technology, there grew a rose of education. In a kindergarten and kinder garden, where young seedlings are nurtured and encouraged to grow in the way that is right for each. Once upon a time, and that time is now, where there grows in the rose's garden a dragon's egg. And so that's part of the story that I've been working on for the Rose of Education. But yeah, so the Rose of Education organization is a space.
It sounds It sounds so enchanting.
and it's meant to be. And so really is about this. So the story is about the Rose is about as a space tourism industry startup, developing operations in education, entertainment, and exploration. And the Rose of Education Trail intends to be the answer to the question, what kind of games and sports will humanity play in space? The reason for the Rose of Education is to ensure that all children of the world, especially in developing countries, will have an opportunity, innovators and leaders, that they will be stakeholders in this new space economy and captains of enterprises and industries. But how do we get there from here, from terra firma to the stars? And so when I found the Rose of Education, it was with a 50-year business plan and vision. And so to go in line with the 50 years I was transported into the future when I was holding my grandson in my arms. And so the 50th anniversary of the Rose of Education will be November 24th, 2060. And so on the 50th anniversary of Grail, and you're invited to the party, AO. So I'll be sending you a party. So because on that date, we'll be inaugurating the Eden 3 Mars colony, a sustainable off-world habitat designed by the Rose Rockets International STEAM team. So students and teams from around the world, from all these developing countries where Grandpa has visited. So the House of Flying Dragons, that's where the Rose Rockets are part of. And as Grandpa has been traveling around the world, we've been establishing bases for the House of Flying Dragons, where the Rose Rockets teams will be a part of. And they'll be designing this sustainable off-world colony. And so we'll be going to be inaugurating that. And we're 13 years into that business plan, and we're nearing the end of the first phase of education and entering the entertainment phase. And that's where the games are coming in, where we'll be introducing these games that we will be part of what we envision will be the type of games that will be able to be played by space colonists, people working on Mars or on the space colonies or on the moon or in low or zero gravity. And we want to be pioneers in that industry. But how do we get there from here? And so I envisioned then in my travels, the Rose of Education, like I said, it really is a garden of technology. Envision the Rose of Education as a garden. And so I've been traveling, been planting seeds and growing the infrastructure and the network, and really building this international platform to launch our space ambitions. And so what's also inside the House of Flying Dragons, what's being built, is the Space Arc, is an acronym for Academy for Real Kids. So it's a Space Academy for Real Kids. So the Space Arc will be there as part of Treo's STEM and STEAM education with a focus on what we're building. The Space Arc, we're building a Space Arc, and the destination for the Space Arc is the Eden 3 Mars colony or moon colony. And so we're not only building the place where it's being built, but we have a vehicle to get there. So the Space Arc, it represents the vehicle to get to the Eden 3 Mars colony, as well as doing the training and education of the ones who will be part of this grand vision and effort. And so it's really about how do we dream high, dream beyond the mountaintop to infinity and beyond. And we don't, but ultimately it's not about the destination. It's about the journey. Yeah. And that's one of the things that's too. And so you asked about, do kids in the U.S. or kids in other countries, are they more engaged with STEM or STEAM? And I would say that it's the manner of education. It's the manner of how it's. And so if it's not we have underrepresented in these communities because we're not presented it in a way that is engaging. And so I go through all. And so one of the things I've seen is that no matter what countries I've been in, when I was in Germany, so I'm in Germany at this beautiful school, and I was working with this fourth grade class and doing art, fitness, and literacy project. And so I brought in coconuts, and we're doing the game in German, in Deutsch. And so they were doing their names, but instead of doing it in English, they were doing it in German. And then we also I brought a bunch of coconuts, which were the first prototypes of the Dragon's Egg. And so they did the art part of the program. They all painted their own Dragon's Egg with their own design. They had some beautiful designs, amazing. Wow. And then the fitness part, where they're doing the dragon flying workouts. And so we had them out on the playground. They all had about 20, 30 students, all had their Dragon's Egg painted, and we put them in patterns, and they're doing races. And forget about having technology or an iPad. They were having so much fun. The teachers were all on that plan as well. No, there's no difference. We all play the same. We all find the same thing. One thing I found is that we're all the same. We're just looking for something to tap into more than just sitting down being told what this is, but being able to discover it for ourselves. Yeah. And that's really what development of these games have been in this kind of 9-year development cycle and process. People say, why it takes so long? I didn't want to hem it in. I wanted to have it, give it this product or this, I don't even consider it as a product, consider its own entity. It has a life of its own. I don't own it. And so part of the then is allowing it to grow and allowing others to engage and then to learn from that process. But then to also have how to give it its fullest expression, not develop to its capabilities, but to try to discover its limitations.
Yeah.
And so that's a process that, companies like IDEO do, or in the lean development community, all those are part of things that I've been able to draw upon and bring in and think about how I want my own company to operate. And but so, yeah, no, I think there's such a large opportunity, and that also what products as an entrepreneur, we have a responsibility, not just to the community that we're looking to deliver our products and services to. And that it's not looking at them as an ATM or they're helping to pay for our development. We're pushing out all the costs for that to them, but honoring that, and that it should be a continued value. And so for me, it was about if I'm developing products and applications for my grandkids,
Yeah.
I want them to be interesting. I want these games really to grow with them and to be able to grow with them. And so starting at this elementary level with writing on a chalkboard to advancing to an AI large language and acronymic large language model that gives them a wide playing field for individuals to come in and find where they want to. Do they like just word games? You can just play the real game and play. I love word games and just use it as a puzzle. Or
Yeah.
if you're interested in the programmatic aspect of it and discovering it from a storytelling aspect. And so it's really meant to for me, to appeal to all of my varied interests as an artist and an athlete, as a scientist and as a seer. It's really how to create something that for the full expression of my identity and for the identity of those who would engage with these.